judge has ruled the city of Albuquerque is not allowed to sweep through homeless camps and take people's belongings. This after a group of people living in a city park filed a lawsuit claiming the city's seizures violated their rights. News 13's Gabe Chavez has the details of the order.
New Mexico, 2025. It's still dark when the knock comes. Not a rescue knock, not a friend, not help. A flashlight beam slides across the inside of a fogged-up windshield. The kind of beam that makes your heart jump before your brain even catches up. Outside, the frontage road is quiet, but not peaceful. Parked along the edge are tired RVs, dented sedans, old work trucks with blankets taped over the windows, and entire neighborhood made of vehicles. Held together by luck and silence. Some people here made a bargain they never meant to make. Trade a legal address for a parking spot that won't get you cited before dawn.
Unconstitutional to criminalize somebody's very being when there's no place legally for people to go in the city. Like, there just has to be, people cannot be herded around from place to place because they don't have a home.
Trade pain relief for one more night of sleep. Trade stability for survival. Officials call it vehicle dwelling. Outreach workers call it crisis care in motion. People living it have another word: staying alive. And here's the part the headlines keep missing. In New Mexico's homelessness emergency, substance use is not a side plot. It is one of the main engines woven into the rent crisis, the shelter crisis, and the way the street now works. Tonight, we're going to map how addiction, policy, and poverty are binding people to the edge in 2025 and what New Mexico can do right now to reverse the spiral. Welcome to Homeless US News. We tell the truth with humanity. No graphic details. No glamorizing addiction. No rumors dressed up as facts. Just the real story so we can talk about real solutions.
Today, the city responded to the injunction stating, quote, "This dangerous ruling would severely limit our ability to keep our city clean and safe while getting people connected to the help they need." It goes on to say they plan to challenge the injunction.
Part 1. What changed? A new street reality. To understand New Mexico right now, you have to understand three forces moving at the same time. First, the drug supply changed. This is the era where a mistake can become an emergency fast. Not because people suddenly became weaker, but because the street got stronger drugs. More contamination, more unpredictability, more risk. In cities like Albuquerque and Las Cruces, outreach teams describe the same pattern. People who were barely holding on get pulled under quickly. A relapse that once might have led to a hard week now leads to a crisis call, and a visit, or worse. Second, the rent math hardened. The pandemic years reshaped housing costs across the country. But in New Mexico, the damage hit a state that already carried deep poverty, low wages, and thin margins. When rents rise and wages don't, it isn't just more stress, it becomes a countdown. The late notice, the fees, the eviction filing, the move into a motel, the move into a vehicle, the move into a spot near the river or behind a warehouse, or outside a big box store wherever a person can exist without being pushed away. Third, the shelter system is under a different kind of pressure. A lot of shelters were designed for a world where the problem was mostly a roof and a case plan. But when substance use and mental health crises are part of the daily reality, the front door becomes complicated. Some doors require sobriety first. Some doors require paperwork first. Some doors close early. Some doors are too crowded for people who carry trauma, fear, and distress. And when someone can't get through the door, they don't stop needing a place to sleep. They adapt. They move into RVs. They sleep in cars. They rotate between motel rooms, friends' couches, and parking lots. They become invisible until the day they aren't. Now zoom out and look at what that creates. A state where the visible crisis grows: more people outside, more camps, more vehicles, while the hidden crisis grows even faster. People living one missed paycheck away from joining them. And at the center of it is a painful truth. You cannot separate homelessness from health, from trauma, and from addiction in New Mexico right now. The issues are braided together. So if the response treats them like separate problems, housing over here, treatment over there, Enforcement over here, compassion over there. New Mexico stays stuck because the street does not operate in separate categories. It operates in survival. Part 2, alcohol, the slow emergency that shapes everything. Fentanyl grabs national attention. Meth dominates fear. But in New Mexico, alcohol has been a long-running emergency, quiet, constant, and deadly. And to understand why it matters so much in homelessness, you have to understand something basic. Alcohol dependence is not only about behavior. It is often a medical condition. For some people, suddenly stopping alcohol is not just uncomfortable. It can be dangerous. That means the phrase sober-only shelter can land like a locked door on a storm night. Because if a person is dependent and terrified of withdrawal, their body will choose physiology over policy every time. This is where systems break. A person wants to come inside, but they cannot promise sobriety on demand. And without a safe place to stabilize with monitoring, hydration, nutrition, and clinical support, they can't safely become sober just because a rule says so. So they sleep outside. And outside in New Mexico can be brutal in its own way. High desert weather swings, heat that drains you, cold that stiffens your hands by morning, wind that makes sleep feel impossible. Add dehydration, poor nutrition, and chronic illness, and small health problems become big fast. This is why an alcohol-competent homelessness response isn't a luxury. It's basic safety. It looks like a shelter or bridge site that can screen people quickly. It looks like staff trained to recognize withdrawal risk. It looks like medical support, even if it's limited, someone who can monitor symptoms and intervene early. It looks like nutrition and hydration treated as medical tools, not perks. It looks like a policy that says, if you come in seeking safety, we won't punish you for being sick. Because if the system demands perfection before protection, it will lose people to the street. And there is another layer, shame. In New Mexico, many people dealing with alcohol dependence are older adults who once worked steady jobs, cared for family, served in the military, built houses, drove trucks, ran kitchens. Losing stability can break identity. And when identity breaks, people hide until the situation is too far gone. The most effective programs pair medicine with dignity. They deliver a message that changes everything. You're welcome today, not after you fix yourself. Today. That is not permissiveness. That is what engagement looks like. And engagement is where recovery begins. Part 3, 5 pathways from use to the street and how to reverse them. Homelessness does not have one doorway. It has many. In New Mexico, these are 5 of the most common pathways, especially when substance use is part of the picture. Pathway 1, eviction plus self-medication. Someone loses hours at work. A back injury flares up. Anxiety spikes. Sleep disappears. A friend offers a shortcut, something to calm the body, quiet the mind, get through the night. At first, it looks like coping. Then rent comes due. Then the coping becomes dependency. Then the money collapses. Then the housing collapses. The reversal starts with stopping the free fall. Not with lectures, not with shame, with access. Same-day treatment options, a safe place to sleep, a way to keep working, help that arrives before the tow truck does. Pathway 2, weightless in a fast-moving crisis. Readiness is real, but it doesn't last forever. A person says, I'm ready today. The system says, come back next week. In today's drug environment, next week can be too late. When people hit that moment of readiness, the system has to move at the speed of reality. Quick starts, rapid follow-ups, care brought to where people are, and an actual place to stabilize. Otherwise, the window closes and the street takes over again. Pathway 3, shelter rules versus biology. Many shelters need rules to stay safe. That's real. But rules designed for order can collide with medicine and trauma. A person is turned away because they're not sober. A couple is separated and decides not to enter. A person with severe anxiety can't handle crowded rooms. Someone won't leave their pet behind. So they choose the street because at least the street doesn't split their family. Or demand calm from a nervous system that's in constant alarm. Reversal here means designing shelter around human reality. Low barrier options, Space for couples. Had accommodations where possible. A trauma-informed approach that focuses on de-escalation and stability, not punishment. Pathway 4, the criminalization loop. A citation becomes a warrant. A warrant becomes a missed job opportunity. A sweep becomes lost documents. Lost documents become lost housing applications. Lost housing applications become another month outside. The system calls it consequences. The street experiences it as quicksand. Reversal means replacing churn with exits, diversion options tied to treatment and housing, real storage and retrieval of belongings, and legal support that clears the path instead of stacking obstacles. Pathway 5, rural distance meets urban drugs. New Mexico's geography matters. In rural areas, transportation barriers are not minor. They decide whether you can reach a clinic, a job interview, a court date, a housing appointment. Meanwhile, the drug supply travels faster than services. So people fall through the cracks, then land in a city where they have no support network, no paperwork, no place to stay. Reversal means hub and spoke services, mobile teams, predictable outreach routes, transportation support, and safe places where people can stabilize without being chased from one lot to the next. If you listen closely, every pathway shares the same truth. People don't choose chaos. They get pushed into it when systems move slower than crisis. So the solution is not a single program. It's a coordinated response that moves faster than the fall. Part 4, the shelter dilemma. WHY Get Clean First breaks the pipeline. Here's the contradiction at the center of this crisis. Many shelters want sobriety to keep everyone safe. But many people can't become sober without treatment on demand and a place to stabilize. So the door becomes a trap. The person is told, come back when you're clean. But their body is wired for withdrawal. Their mind is wired for panic. Their life is wired for survival. And survival outside often requires the very thing the shelter refuses. This is why the conversation has to evolve. New Mexico needs a spectrum. Some sites that are sober-focused for people who are stable enough to meet that expectation. And some sites that are low barrier, medically informed, and built for stabilization, because if you don't create that bridge, you create an endless street. The difference between a system that works and a system that churns is simple. A working system offers a next step that is real, immediate, and reachable. Not a referral slip, not a phone number that no one answers, not an intake appointment 3 bus rides away. A real step, a safe bed tonight, clinical support that reduces crisis, a pathway into housing that doesn't reset every morning. And for people living in vehicles, this matters even more, because a vehicle is not a stable home. It's a fragile compromise. A tow notice, a dead battery, a broken window, or a single ticket can collapse that housing overnight. Then the person who was hidden becomes visible on the sidewalk, in the park, under the overpass. If New Mexico wants fewer people on the street, it has to protect and stabilize people before they become street homeless. That means safe parking with services, bridge options, and real exits. The shelter dilemma is not solved by tougher rules. It's solved by better design. Part 5. What works in New Mexico when it's built for real life? The good news is this: New Mexico does not need to invent hope from scratch. The best solutions already exist in pieces. The challenge is scaling them and connecting them. Here is what works when it's done at the scale of the need. 1. Low barrier entry plus same-day care. When someone is ready, the system has to meet them now. That means walk-in access where possible. Mobile outreach that can start care and connect people quickly. Follow-up that happens where people actually are, not where a brochure says they should be. 2. Housing first logic, not housing as a reward. If you want treatment to stick, people need stability. A room, a door, a place to sleep without fear. Then you wrap services around that foundation. Case management, medical care, recovery support, mental health support, employment navigation. Housing is the platform that makes everything else possible. 3. Safe parking with services, not punishment. For people living in vehicles, the fastest stabilization is often not a shelter bed. It's safe parking, a legal place, bathrooms, trash service, water, charging stations, mail support, on-site navigation, clear rules that focus on safety, not humiliation. Safe parking is not giving up, it's preventing a collapse. 4. Encampment response that includes real offers. If a camp must be cleared, the only humane and effective approach is one built on exits, real placements, transportation, storage for belongings, medication continuity, navigation that doesn't disappear after the cleanup crew leaves. Because if the response is just displacement, the result is predictable, the same people, in a new place with fewer possessions and more trauma. 5. Data that the public can see. A system that works measures outcomes, not activity. Not how many contacts, not how many brochures, but how many people got inside this week. How many started care? How many moved into housing? How many are still housed at 90 days, 6 months, 1 year? When results are public, the incentives change. Collaboration increases, excuses shrink, and the biggest lesson is this: when people can access help without having to be perfect on day one, more people take the first step. That first step is everything. Part 6, a practical playbook, 90 days to create traction. New Mexico doesn't need a perfect plan 5 years from now if people are freezing and overheating today. It needs traction in 90 days. Here's what that looks like. Step 1, make stabilization the standard. Fund low-barrier sites that can keep people safe without demanding immediate perfection. Train staff for crisis de-escalation, trauma-informed care, and basic clinical screening. Create clear pathways from stabilization into bridge housing and permanent housing. Step 2, expand safe parking in every metro area. Not scattered lots, not hidden rules, not good luck. Real sites with basic infrastructure and staffed navigation. When you give people a stable base, even if it's a parking space, you reduce chaos and increase engagement. Step 3, move services to where people are. Mobile teams that bring care, benefits, navigation, and housing paperwork into the places where people actually live. Parking corridors, motel zones, street clusters, rural hubs, not referrals, real handoffs. Step 4, stop paperwork from becoming a trap. Streamline ID replacement, simplify benefits access. Create presumed eligibility for the most vulnerable so the system doesn't demand documents that are almost impossible to protect while unhoused. Step 5, publish a weekly scoreboard. Beds available tonight, placements this month, treatment starts this week, housing moves this quarter, returns to homelessness tracked honestly, not to shame, to steer resources, to earn trust. And if leaders want one question that cuts through the politics, it's this: how many doors will open, by what date, and how will the public see the results? Because in a crisis, adjectives are not enough. Numbers matter, dates matter, proof matters. Outro, keys, not keepsakes. New Mexico didn't ask for a drug supply that moves faster than old systems can respond. It didn't ask for housing costs that turn one missed paycheck into a life on the edge. And it didn't ask for decades of preventable loss tied to alcohol, poverty, and untreated illness. But New Mexico can decide what happens next. We can keep cycling people through the most expensive, least effective loop. Parking lot to citation, citation to court, court to street, street to emergency room back to the lot. Or we can choose the response that actually changes outcomes. Stabilize first, treat fast, house people, then support them. Because behind every RV tucked behind a tarp and every sedan parked quietly behind a church, there's a person who still wants the same basic things most of us take for granted. A safe place to sleep, a steady address, a mailbox with their name on it, a chance to heal without being chased from one corner to the next. And if substance use is one of the engines of homelessness here, that means it's also one of the most powerful levers for change if we build care and housing to work together, quickly and at scale. So here's what you can do. If you live in New Mexico, learn which local organizations provide outreach, housing navigation, and recovery support. Support the ones that measure outcomes and treat people with dignity. If you vote, vote for doors that open, not just promises that sound good. Ask leaders for timelines, numbers, and results you can see. If you're able, support safe parking, bridge housing, and low-barrier stabilization sites because these are the steps that stop people from sliding from hidden homelessness into the street. And on the most human level, when you see someone living in a vehicle or on a sidewalk, don't turn them into a symbol. Don't reduce them to a political argument. Remember, a person can be struggling and still be worthy of respect. This is Homeless US News. If you want us to cover your city or region next, tell us where you are in the comments. Share this video with someone who thinks homelessness is just a personal failure. And if you stay with us, we will keep reporting these stories with facts, with empathy, and with an unshakable belief that in a country with resources, survival should never be the best we can offer, because the desert keeps a record of what we build. Let's build something that works. Keys, not keepsakes.